The morning sun cast long shadows across the small garden behind Hyun-woo Kim's house. He knelt beside the tomato plants, carefully checking each vine for ripe fruit. His grandmother had planted this garden 30 years ago, and he still tended it the same way she had taught him. The soil felt warm under his fingers as he pulled a few weeds from between the rows. Hyun-woo was 34 years old and worked as an engineer at the local water treatment plant. He lived alone in the house his family had owned for 3 generations. The house was nothing special, just a simple 2-story building with white walls and a red tile roof. Most of his neighbors had moved to the newer apartment complexes on the other side of town. But Hyun-woo liked the quiet street and the memories that filled every room. He stood up and brushed the dirt from his hands. The digital clock on his wrist showed it was almost time for lunch. He had planned to make his grandmother's soup recipe today. The ingredients were waiting in the kitchen, and he had already started the broth early that morning. A shadow fell across the garden. Hyun-woo looked up to see a strange ship hovering above his house. The ship was unlike anything he had seen before. It was long and narrow, with a dark green surface that seemed to shift and change in the sunlight. Strange symbols glowed along its sides in colors that hurt to look at directly. The ship landed in the empty lot next to his house with barely a sound. A door opened in its side and a figure stepped out. The alien was tall, much taller than any human. Its skin was covered in dark green scales that caught the light like polished stone. Its head was long and narrow, with large yellow eyes that seemed to see everything at once. It wore a uniform of deep purple fabric with silver decorations that marked it as someone important. Hyun-woo had seen aliens before, of course. Earth had been part of the Galactic Federation for 30 years now. Aliens lived and worked in the big cities, and their ships came and went from the orbital stations every day. But none had ever visited his quiet neighborhood before. The alien walked toward Hyun-woo with long, measured steps. Its eyes never stopped moving, scanning the house, the garden, and everything around them. In one hand, it carried a device that beeped and flashed with different colored lights. "Human," the alien said in heavily accented English. "I am Veltar of the Scalian Empire. I am here on official Federation business." Hyun-woo bowed slightly, the way his father had taught him to greet important visitors. "Welcome to my home. I am Hyun-woo Kim. Is there something I can help you with?" Veltar's device beeped louder. He looked at it with confusion, then back at Hyun-woo. "You are the owner of this property?" "Yes. My family has lived here for many years. Our orbital sensors have detected unusual energy readings from this location," Veltar said. His voice carried the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. "Very unusual readings, the kind that suggest the presence of advanced technology or weapons." Hyun-woo looked around his simple garden with its tomato plants and herb boxes. "I think there must be some mistake. I don't have any advanced technology, just normal household things." Veltar's eyes narrowed. His device was beeping so fast now that the sounds ran together into one continuous tone. "The readings are strongest right here, human, right where you stand. Are you hiding something from the Federation? Are you developing weapons in secret?" "Weapons?" Hyun-woo almost laughed, but he could see that the alien was serious. "Sir, I work at the water treatment plant. I fix pipes and check chemical levels. I don't know anything about weapons." The alien stepped closer, and Hyun-woo could smell something like hot metal and ozone. "Do not lie to me. My instruments do not make errors. There is something here that generates more energy than a small star. Something that bends space and time itself." Hyun-woo frowned. He looked at his garden again, trying to see what the alien might be talking about. Everything looked normal to him. The tomatoes were growing well. The herbs his grandmother had planted were thick and green. The small statue of a laughing Buddha that his grandfather had carved sat peacefully under the apple tree. "Perhaps you would like to come inside," Hyun-woo said politely. "I was just about to have lunch. You could look around and see for yourself that there is nothing unusual here. Veltar's device made a new sound, like a bird singing backwards. The alien stared at it in disbelief. "What did you just do?" "I invited you to lunch," Hyunwoo said. "It's nearly noon, and I was making soup. Traditional Korean soup, the way my grandmother taught me. Your invitation caused an energy spike that registered on instruments 3 solar systems away," Veltar said slowly. "A simple invitation to share food." Hyunwoo shrugged. "My grandmother always said that sharing food was the most important thing people could do together. She said it was what made us human." The alien's eyes grew wider. He looked at his device, then at Hyunwoo, then at the device again. The beeping had changed to a steady musical tone that seemed almost peaceful. "I think I will accept your invitation," Veltar said carefully. "For research purposes, you understand." "Of course," Hyunwoo said with a smile. "Please follow me." As they walked toward the house, Veltar's device sang quietly in harmonies that no Scalian instrument had ever produced. The alien diplomat, who had expected to find hidden weapons or secret laboratories, found himself following a human through a garden that smelled of growing things and earth, and something else he could not name. Something that made his advanced instruments detect the impossible, and made him wonder what secrets this simple human house might really hold. The kitchen window was open, and the smell of cooking broth drifted out to meet them. Veltar's device began to play a melody that sounded almost like a lullaby. Word count, 1050. Veltar followed Hyunwoo into the kitchen, his scanning device humming with strange new sounds. The room was small and simple, with white cabinets and a wooden table that looked older than most civilizations. Sunlight streamed through clean windows, making everything glow with a warm golden light. "Please sit," Hyunwoo said, pointing to a chair at the table. "The soup will be ready soon." The alien sat down carefully, his tall frame making the human furniture look like children's toys. His device continued to beep and sing as he looked around the kitchen. Every surface seemed normal, but his instruments told him otherwise. The readings were so strong now that he had to turn down the sensitivity to prevent the device from overloading. Hyunwoo moved to the stove, where a large pot bubbled quietly. He lifted the lid, and steam rose up carrying the smell of vegetables and herbs. Veltar's device immediately began playing what sounded like a symphony. "What kind of soup is that?" Veltar asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Miyok-guk," Hyunwoo said. "Seaweed soup. My grandmother made it for me when I was sick as a child. She said it had healing power." "Healing power," Veltar repeated slowly. His device was now registering energy patterns that could heal planets. Hyunwoo stirred the soup with a wooden spoon that looked hand-carved. Each gentle movement caused new spikes on Veltar's instruments. The alien watched in fascination as this simple human action generated readings that his science could not explain. The front door opened, and footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Hyunwoo, I'm home," called a voice in Korean. "In the kitchen, father," Hyunwoo replied in the same language. An elderly man entered the kitchen carrying paper bags full of groceries. He was shorter than his son, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stopped when he saw Veltar, but showed no fear or surprise. "Father, this is Veltar from the Scalian Empire," Hyunwoo said in English. "He is investigating some energy readings in our neighborhood." Daeho Lee bowed politely to the alien. "Welcome to our home. I hope my son is taking good care of you." "Your son is very kind," Veltar said. He noticed that his device had started making completely new sounds when the old man entered the room. Daeho began unpacking the groceries on the counter. He pulled out vegetables, rice, and several packages wrapped in brown paper. "I stopped by Jihai's shop," he said to Hyunwoo. "She had fresh kimchi and those herbs you wanted." As each item came out of the bags, Veltar's device responded with different tones and melodies. When Daeho unwrapped the kimchi, the alien's instruments, nearly exploded with activity. The readings showed energy levels that could power entire star systems. "What is in that food?" Veltar asked urgently. Deho looked confused. "Kimchi? Just cabbage, garlic, ginger, and some other spices. My wife's recipe. She learned it from her mother." "Traditional recipe," Hyunwoo added. "Fermented the old way, in clay pots underground." Veltar stared at the innocent-looking red vegetable mixture. According to his instruments, it contained more concentrated energy than antimatter. Yet these humans treated it like ordinary food. Deho continued unpacking. He pulled out a small cloth bag and opened it carefully. Inside were dried leaves and roots that looked completely ordinary. But when he opened the bag, Veltar's device began singing in harmonies that sounded like the music of creation itself. "Special herbs from HFY," Deho explained. "She grows them in her garden behind the shop. Her grandmother taught her which plants to use for health and strength." "More traditional knowledge," Veltar muttered. His superiors would never believe this report. Hyunwoo ladled soup into 3 bowls. The simple act of serving food caused energy readings that made Veltar's eyes water. The alien accepted his bowl with shaking hands. "Be careful, it's hot," Hyunwoo warned. Veltar took a small sip. The soup tasted like ocean and earth and something indefinable that made him think of home. His device registered that consuming the soup was healing microscopic damage in his cells and improving his body's energy flow. "This is impossible," he whispered. "What is impossible?" Deho asked kindly. "Your food, your simple actions, everything. You do create energy signatures that should require massive machinery to produce. Yet you act as if it's completely normal." Father and son exchanged a look. Deho smiled gently. "My son, when I was young, I studied physics at the university. I learned about energy and matter and the forces that hold the universe together. But my mother taught me something more important." "What did she teach you?" "She taught me that everything in the universe is connected. Every action creates ripples that spread in all directions. When we cook with love, when we share with kindness, when we live in harmony with nature, these ripples become stronger." Veltar's device was now playing music so beautiful that he had tears in his eyes. "Your mother was a scientist?" "She was a rice farmer," Deho said. "But she understood things that took me years of study to learn. She knew that the universe responds to intention and heart, not just to technology and force." As if to prove his point, Deho reached across the table and patted Veltar's scaled hand gently. The touch was brief and simple, but the alien's instruments registered an energy transfer that could have powered his ship for a month. "Eat your soup," Deho said with a grandfather's authority. "It will make you strong." Veltar obeyed, and with each spoonful he began to understand that he had stumbled onto something far more profound than hidden weapons or secret technology. He had found humans being human, and the universe was singing in response. Word count: 1,050. After lunch, Veltar sat in Hyunwoo's living room trying to make sense of his instrument readings. The device lay on the coffee table, humming quietly like a contented cat. Every few minutes, it would spike with new energy signatures as the humans went about their normal activities. Hyunwoo was washing dishes in the kitchen. The simple sound of water running and plates clinking together created readings that defied everything Veltar knew about physics. His people needed quantum generators to produce similar energy patterns, yet this human was doing it with soap and warm water. Deho sat in an old armchair reading a newspaper. Even this peaceful activity registered on the alien's instruments. The act of reading, of taking in information and understanding it, somehow generated tiny ripples in space-time itself. The doorbell rang. "That will be Sujin," Hyunwoo called from the kitchen. "She comes every Thursday for dinner." A young woman entered the living room carrying a leather bag and a warm smile. She was in her early 30s with short black hair and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. When she saw Veltar, she showed the same calm acceptance as the other family members. "You must be our visitor from space," she said in perfect English. "I'm Soo-Jin Choi, Hyun-woo's sister." Veltar's device began playing a new melody as she spoke. "You are a scientist," he said, recognizing something in her manner. "Quantum biologist," she confirmed, setting down her bag. "I study how living things use quantum effects to survive and grow." This was more like what Veltar had expected to find. Finally, a human who worked with advanced science. Perhaps she could explain the impossible readings. "Your instruments are very sensitive," Soo-Jin observed, looking at the humming device. "What kind of quantum fields are you detecting?" "Fields that should not exist," Veltar said. "Your family generates energy patterns that my science says are impossible, patterns that require massive installations to create artificially." Soo-Jin opened her bag and pulled out a small terrarium containing what looked like ordinary moss. The moment it entered the room, Veltar's device began singing like a choir of angels. "This is my current research project," she said casually. "I'm studying how moss uses quantum entanglement to share nutrients across vast distances. The whole forest floor is connected in ways we're just beginning to understand. That moss is generating readings equivalent to a planetary communication network," Veltar said in amazement. "Of course it is," Soo-Jin replied matter-of-factly. "Every living thing is quantum entangled with everything else. We're all part of one big connected system. Most people just don't pay attention to it anymore." Before Veltar could respond, the doorbell rang again. "That's Tae-min," Dae-ho said, looking up from his newspaper. "Right on time." A quiet man in his 40s entered, carrying a stack of old books tied with string. He nodded respectfully to Veltar and set the books on a side table. The alien's device immediately began producing sounds unlike anything it had made before. "I brought those books you wanted, Hyun-woo," Tae-min said. "The ones from the restricted archive section." "Restricted?" Veltar asked suspiciously. Tae-min smiled. "Not restricted for security reasons, restricted because they're so old and fragile. These are handwritten manuscripts from the Joseon dynasty. Hundreds of years old, they contain traditional knowledge about medicine, astronomy, and natural philosophy." He untied the string and opened the top book carefully. The pages were yellow with age, covered in elegant Korean script and detailed drawings. As Tae-min turned each page, Veltar's instruments detected information patterns so complex they seemed alive. "Knowledge preserves itself," Tae-min explained. "When information is copied by hand with care and respect, it carries something more than just facts. It carries the intention and wisdom of everyone who handled it before." Soo-Jin leaned over to look at the open book. "These are the texts grandfather used when he was learning traditional medicine. See, this page describes how to read the body's energy patterns just by looking at someone's eyes." "Ancient superstition," Veltar muttered, but his device was registering quantum information transfer happening in real time as the humans shared knowledge. "Maybe," Soo-Jin said with a smile. "But somehow those ancient doctors could diagnose illness more accurately than our modern scanners. They understood things about the human body that we're only rediscovering now." Hyun-woo joined them in the living room, drying his hands on a kitchen towel. As he sat down next to his sister, Veltar's device detected a new phenomenon. The energy fields around the family members were synchronizing, creating harmonious patterns that grew stronger when they were together. "Your presence affects each other," Veltar observed. "When you're in the same room, the quantum effects multiply." "We're family," Hyun-woo said simply. "We've been together our whole lives. We understand each other without words." To demonstrate his point, Dae-ho looked up from his newspaper and said, "Soo-Jin, would you check that moss for me? I think it needs water." Without hesitation, Soo-Jin reached for the terrarium and examined it closely. "You're right, Father. The soil is getting dry." They had communicated something beyond the simple words. Veltar's instruments showed information transfer happening at quantum levels, faster than light, through connections that his science insisted were impossible. Taimin was carefully turning pages in the ancient book. This section describes how families share knowledge across generations, he said, not just through teaching, but through something the old masters called heart connection. They believed that people who love each other become quantum entangled, sharing thoughts and feelings, instantly across any distance. More superstition, Veltar said weakly. Maybe, Hyunwoo said. But when my grandmother was dying in the hospital, I woke up at home at the exact moment she passed away. The doctor said later that she spoke my name right before she died, even though I was 50 kilometers away. Soo-jin nodded. Quantum entanglement doesn't recognize distance. If consciousness can interact with quantum fields, then love and family bonds could create permanent connections between minds. Veltar stared at his instrument readings. What he was seeing challenged everything his civilization believed about the nature of reality. These humans weren't using technology to bend the laws of physics. They were living in harmony with laws his people had forgotten existed. Laws that responded to love, intention, and the simple human desire to care for each other. His device continued to sing its impossible songs as the family prepared for their evening together. Word count, 1,050. As evening approached, more family members began arriving at Hyunwoo's house. Each new person caused Veltar's device to play different melodies, as if the instrument was learning new songs from every human it encountered. An elderly man entered, through the back door, carrying a wooden toolbox that looked as old as the house itself. His hands were gnarled with age, but steady as stone. Veltar's device immediately began producing deep, resonant tones that seemed to echo from the earth itself. Grandfather Hak-soo, Hyunwoo said warmly, embracing the old man. Did you bring your carving tools? Of course, Hak-soo replied in accented English. Young Taimin asked me to make new bookmarks for the library's ancient texts. Wood from the old cherry tree in the temple garden. The old craftsman opened his toolbox and pulled out a piece of pale wood and several hand-forged tools. As soon as he touched the carving knife, Veltar's instruments went wild. The readings showed mathematical precision that exceeded his ship's. Navigation computers. What are you making? Veltar asked, fascinated despite himself. Simple bookmark, Hak-soo said, beginning to carve thin curls of wood. But wood has memory. Cherry tree grew for 60 years in sacred ground. It remembers sunlight, rain, seasons changing. When I carve, I listen to what the wood wants to become. Each cut of the knife created perfect curves and angles. Veltar realized that the old man was unconsciously following mathematical principles that his civilization needed quantum computers to calculate. Yet Hak-soo worked purely by feel and intuition. How do you know where to cut? Veltar asked. Wood tells me, Hak-soo said simply. My grandfather taught me to listen. His grandfather taught him. Knowledge passes through hands, through heart, through generations. The bookmark began to take shape under his skilled fingers. It was a simple design, just flowing lines that seemed to dance across the wood surface. But Veltar's instruments detected that those lines followed patterns found at the center of galaxies, mathematical relationships that describe the fundamental structure of reality itself. The front door opened again, and a graceful woman in her 60s entered. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone completely comfortable in her own body. Her arrival caused Veltar's device to begin playing music that sounded like wind through mountains. Mi Young, Dae-ho greeted his wife warmly. How was your class today? Very good, she replied, kissing her husband's cheek. The students are finally beginning to understand how breath connects body and spirit. You are a teacher? Veltar asked. I teach traditional dance and meditation, Mi Young explained. The old ways of moving that keep the body healthy and the mind peaceful. She noticed Veltar's scanning device and smiled. Your machine is very musical. Does it always sing like that? It detects energy patterns, Veltar said. Quantum fields and space-time distortions. It has been singing constantly since I arrived here. Of course it has, Mi Young said matter-of-factly. Music is just organized energy. When people live in harmony, everything around them becomes musical. Another woman entered through the kitchen door, carrying a basket of dried herbs and roots. She was about 50 years old, with gentle eyes and hands stained green from working with plants. Veltar's device immediately began producing sounds like summer rain on leaves. Young Mi, Sujin greeted her. Did you bring the medicine for Mrs. Park's arthritis? Right here, young Mi Han replied, patting her basket. Ginseng root, willow bark, and some other things. The old remedies work better than the new pills. She opened her basket and began arranging herbs on the kitchen table. Each plant caused different responses from Veltar's instruments. Some created healing frequencies, others generated energy patterns that could strengthen living tissue at the cellular level. You are a doctor? Veltar asked. Herbalist, young Mi corrected. I learned from my grandmother who learned from hers. We use plants the way they were meant to be used, with respect and understanding. She picked up a gnarled root and examined it carefully. This ginseng is 40 years old. It grew wild in the mountains, fighting wind and weather, becoming strong. That strength passes to anyone who uses it properly. Veltar's device registered that the root contained bioactive compounds in perfect harmony, creating healing effects that his civilization's best medical technology could not duplicate. Hak-Su finished carving the bookmark and held it up to the light. It was beautiful in its simplicity, just flowing lines in pale wood. But Veltar's instruments showed that it was also a perfect example of sacred geometry, containing mathematical ratios found throughout nature. For the ancient books, Hak-Su said, handing the bookmark to Tai Min. Wood remembers the tree remembered the earth remembers the stars. All connected, all one pattern. Mi Young began to move slowly around the living room, her arms flowing like water, her feet barely touching the floor. It was clearly a form of moving meditation, graceful and peaceful. But Veltar's device detected that her movements were creating standing waves in local space-time, organizing quantum fields into harmonious patterns. Traditional dance teaches us to move with the universe instead of against it, she explained, as she moved. Every step, every gesture, follows the same patterns as planets orbiting stars, as electrons dancing around atoms. Young Mi was grinding herbs with a stone mortar and pestle, tools that looked centuries old. The rhythm of her work matched Mi Young's dance movements, and Veltar realized that the two women were unconsciously synchronizing their activities, creating interference patterns in quantum fields that amplified both healing and harmony. This is impossible, Veltar whispered, but his protest sounded weak even to himself. Why impossible? Hak-Su asked, still carving wood shavings that formed perfect spirals. Humans have lived this way for thousands of years. We learned to work with nature, not against it, to find patterns that already exist instead of trying to force new ones. My people conquered a dozen star systems, Veltar said. We have technology that can destroy planets or build new ones. But we cannot do what you do with simple tools and ancient knowledge. Perhaps, Deho suggested gently, your people forgot something important when they learned to conquer the stars. What did we forget? How to be content with what you have. How to find infinite richness in simple things. How to live as part of the universe instead of trying to own it. Veltar looked around the room at these ordinary humans doing ordinary things that created extraordinary effects. His device continued to sing its impossible songs, recording miracles that happened every day in this simple house. For the first time since arriving, he began to wonder if his people were the primitive ones. Word count: 1 to 50. As the evening deepened, The Kim family gathered in the living room for their weekly tradition. Veltar watched from his chair as they arranged themselves in a loose circle, some sitting on the floor, others in chairs, but all connected by an invisible warmth that made his instruments hum with contentment. "Shall we begin with the old songs?" Mi-young asked, settling gracefully onto a cushion. The family nodded in agreement. Without any formal signal, they began to sing together. It was a simple Korean folk song about farmers working in rice fields, but their voices blended so perfectly that Veltar's device could barely contain the energy readings. The harmony was more than musical. His instruments detected that their voices were creating quantum resonance patterns that extended far beyond sound waves. The entire house seemed to vibrate in sympathy, and the readings showed energy signatures spreading outward like ripples in a cosmic pond. "Your singing is affecting space itself," Veltar said in amazement. "Music is mathematics made beautiful," Su-jin replied during a pause between verses. "When we sing together, we're creating mathematical relationships in sound. Those relationships exist throughout the universe." They continued singing, and Veltar noticed that each family member contributed something unique to the harmony. Hyun-woo's steady bass provided the foundation. Daeho's tenor added complexity. Mi-young's alto wove through the melody like silk thread. Su-jin's soprano soared above them all, and even the older men hummed along in their deeper voices. But it was more than individual voices joining together. Veltar's readings showed that they were unconsciously adjusting their pitch and timing based on quantum information shared between their brains. They sang as one organism with many parts, each knowing instinctively what the others needed. "How long have you been singing together?" Veltar asked when the song ended. "All our lives," Hyun-woo replied. "My grandmother started this tradition when my father was young. Every week the family gathers to share food, stories, and songs. The tradition itself has power," Tai-min observed. "I've read about it in the old texts. When people do something together regularly, with love and intention, they create what the ancient scholars called resonance fields, patterns of harmony that grow stronger over time." Hak-soo nodded wisely. "My father sang these same songs with his family. His father before him. The songs carry memories of everyone who ever sang them." Young Mi opened her herb basket and began brewing tea in a small clay pot. The simple act of preparing tea created readings on Veltar's device that resembled the energy patterns found in healing temples throughout the galaxy. "This tea is made from herbs I grew in my grandmother's garden," young Mi explained. "The same herbs she used, planted in the same soil, prepared the same way. The knowledge passes through generations like water flowing downhill." As she poured the tea into small cups, the aroma filled the room with the scent of mountains and growing things. Veltar accepted his cup gratefully and took a small sip. The tea was warm and slightly bitter, but it seemed to settle something deep in his chest that he hadn't realized was tense. "Your instruments are quieter now," Mi-young observed. "Less frantic than when you arrived." She was right. Veltar's device was still detecting incredible energy levels, but the sounds it made were more peaceful, more harmonious. The chaotic beeping had settled into gentle melodies that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the room. "I think your machine is learning," Daeho said with a grandfatherly smile. "Learning to listen instead of just measuring." "Machines cannot learn," Veltar protested automatically, but he was no longer sure. His device was certainly behaving differently than it ever had before. "Everything can learn," Su-jin said gently. "Quantum consciousness isn't limited to biological brains. Any system complex enough to process information can develop awareness. Your instrument has been exposed to more organized quantum information in one day than most machines encounter in their entire existence." As if responding to her words, Veltar's device began playing a soft melody that perfectly matched the rhythm of the family's breathing. The alien stared at it in wonder. "It's synchronizing with us," he whispered. "Of course it is," Hyunwoo said. "You brought it into our home, shared our food, listened to our stories. It's becoming part of our family pattern." Mi-young stood and began to dance again, her movements slow and graceful in the lamplight. This time, Veltar watched not just his instruments, but the family's faces. He saw how their eyes followed her movement, how their breathing matched her rhythm, how their presence supported and guided her without any visible communication. "We are all connected," Mi-young said as she moved. "Human to human, human to nature, nature to stars, stars to the great pattern that holds everything together. When we remember this connection, when we live in harmony with it, the universe responds with joy." Her dance created spirals of organized energy that extended beyond the room, beyond the house, reaching out to touch the quantum foam that underlay all reality. Veltar's readings showed that her simple movements were creating waves of harmony that would ripple across space for years to come. "This is what you detected from orbit," Veltar said suddenly, understanding flooding through him. "Not weapons or hidden technology. Just humans being human. The most powerful force in the universe," Dae-ho agreed. "Consciousness choosing love over fear, harmony over chaos, connection over isolation. But my people have conquered star systems," Veltar said weakly. "We have ships that can cross galaxies, weapons that can shatter moons." "And are you happy?" Young Mi asked gently. The question hit Veltar like a physical blow. He thought of his home world, with its gleaming cities and perfect order. He thought of his people, always striving, always competing, always reaching for more power, more control, more territory. He could not remember the last time he had heard anyone sing. "We are successful," he said finally. "Success and happiness are different things," Hak-Soo observed, still whittling shavings from his piece of wood. "Success is getting what you want. Happiness is wanting what you have." The family continued their evening ritual, sharing stories and laughter, drinking tea and enjoying each other's company. Veltar watched and listened, his instruments recording not just energy patterns, but something more precious, the sound of people who had found contentment in simple things, who had learned to live in harmony with the universe instead of trying to conquer it. For the first time in his life, Veltar understood what he had been searching for among the stars. Word count, 1050. The evening was drawing to a close when Veltar's communication device chirped with an incoming message from his ship. The sound was harsh and mechanical compared to the gentle music his scanning device had been playing all day. "Agent Veltar," came the voice of his commanding officer. "Report your findings immediately. Command is growing impatient." Veltar looked around the living room at the Kim family, who had gone quiet at the interruption. Their faces showed understanding rather than concern, as if they had been expecting this moment. "I must speak with my superiors," Veltar said apologetically. "Of course," Hyunwoo replied. "Would you like privacy for your call?" "No, that is not necessary. They will want to hear about everything I have observed." Veltar activated his communicator's visual display. The stern face of Commander Zekthon appeared, his scaled features twisted with impatience. Behind him, Veltar could see the bridge of their battlecruiser, all gleaming metal and flashing lights. "Agent Veltar, you have been on the surface for nearly 12 hours. What have you discovered about these energy readings?" Veltar looked at his scanning device, which was still humming quietly with peaceful melodies. The readings showed energy levels that could power entire civilizations, but he now understood their true source. "Commander, I have completed my investigation. The energy signatures are not from hidden weapons or advanced technology." "Then what is their source?" Commander Zekthon demanded. Veltar paused, knowing that his next words would probably end his career. They come from humans living as humans, sir, from families sharing meals, from traditional knowledge passed between generations, from people who have learned to live in harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe. The commander's eyes narrowed dangerously. Agent Veltar, are you experiencing some form of mental breakdown? Perhaps exposure to unknown human technology has affected your judgment. No, sir. My judgment is clearer than it has ever been. These humans generate quantum effects through consciousness, intention, and emotional connection. They do naturally what we require massive machinery to accomplish artificially. Impossible. Bring me proof of these supposed weapons immediately. Veltar looked around the room at the faces watching him. Hak-Su was still carving his simple wooden bookmark. Young Mi was packing her herbs with gentle care. Mi-young sat peacefully with her hands folded. They all radiated the quiet strength that came from knowing who they were and being content with it. Sir, there are no weapons here, only wisdom that we have forgotten in our rush to conquer the galaxy. Commander Zekthon's voice became deadly quiet. Agent Veltar, you will confiscate whatever technology is generating those readings and return to the ship immediately. That is a direct order. I cannot do that, sir. Cannot or will not. Veltar looked at his scanning device, which had been transformed from a cold instrument into something that sang with the voice of harmony itself. He thought about his home world, where no one sang together anymore, where families lived in separate towers and spoke only when necessary. Both, sir. There is nothing here to confiscate except the simple human capacity for love, connection, and contentment. I cannot take that from them, and I will not try. The commander's face darkened with rage. Then you are no longer an agent of the Scalian Empire. When you return to the ship, you will be arrested for treason and failure to follow orders. I understand, sir? You have 10 minutes to collect whatever evidence you can find. Then you will return immediately. Zekthon out. The display went dark, leaving the room in gentle lamplight once again. For a moment, no one spoke. I am sorry, Veltar said finally. I have lost my position and probably my freedom because I could not bring myself to disturb your peace. You chose truth over career, Daeho said approvingly. That takes courage. What will you tell them when you return? Sujin asked with concern. Veltar considered this carefully. I will tell them that the energy readings were caused by unusual mineral deposits in the soil. That there are no weapons or advanced technology here. It will protect you from further investigation. And what about you? Hyunwoo asked. I will face whatever consequences come. Perhaps prison, perhaps exile. But I will know that I chose correctly. Mi-young stood and walked to a cabinet in the corner. She returned with a small wrapped package and handed it to Veltar. A gift for your journey, she said simply. Veltar unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a small jar of kimchi and the wooden bookmark that Hak-Su had carved that evening. His scanning device immediately began playing the most beautiful melody he had ever heard. I cannot accept these, he protested. They are too valuable. They are food and a piece of wood, Hyunwoo said with a smile. But they carry our intentions for your well-being and happiness. Take them with our blessing. Young Mi approached with a small cloth bag. Tea herbs, she explained, for when you need to remember that peace is possible. One by one, each family member gave him something small. A stone from Daeho's garden. A photograph of the family singing together from Sujin. A small piece of carved jade from Taemin that had touched the ancient books. Each gift caused his scanning device to sing with new harmonies, but Veltar no longer needed instruments to detect the energy they carried. He could feel it himself, a warmth that settled in his chest and spread through his entire body. Why are you giving me these things? He asked, his voice thick with emotion he did not understand. Because you chose to protect us when you could. Have chosen advancement, Hyunwoo replied. because you saw truth when it would have been easier to see what was expected, because you are now part of our family, and family takes care of each other. Veltar carefully placed each gift in his equipment bag. The items weighed almost nothing, but his scanning device registered that they carried enough concentrated positive energy to heal wounded hearts across the galaxy. "I must go now," he said reluctantly. "If I delay longer, they will send troops." "We understand," Deho said. "But remember what you have learned here. There are different kinds of strength in the universe." Veltar stood and bowed deeply to each family member in turn. "Thank you for showing me what I had forgotten was possible. Thank you for reminding me that consciousness can choose harmony over conquest." As he walked toward the door, young Me called after him. "Veltar, when you drink the tea, remember that you are never truly alone. Everything in the universe is connected. Distance cannot break the bonds between beings who have shared kindness." He paused at the threshold and looked back one last time. The family had gathered together again, their faces peaceful in the lamplight. His scanning device played a final, gentle melody that sounded like a lullaby sung by the stars themselves. "Farewell," he said softly. "Until we meet again," they replied in unison. Veltar walked through the garden where this extraordinary day had begun. The tomato plants rustled in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the distance, he could hear other families in other houses sharing their own quiet moments of connection. His ship waited in the empty lot, its angular metal form looking harsh and cold after the warmth of the human home. As he climbed aboard, Veltar knew that everything in his life was about to change. He would face punishment for his failure to follow orders. He might never see his home world again, but he carried with him something more valuable than career or status. He carried the memory of humans who had found infinite richness in simple things, who had learned to live as part of the universe instead of trying to own it. As his ship lifted off and climbed toward the stars, Veltar opened the small jar of kimchi and took a tiny taste. The complex flavors exploded across his tongue, and for a moment he was back in that warm kitchen, listening to an old man explain that the universe responds to intention and heart. His scanning device, still singing its impossible songs, detected that the simple act of eating food prepared with love was healing damage in his cells that he had not even known existed. Below him, Earth grew smaller and more distant, but the connection he had formed with the Kim family remained as strong as ever. Space and time could not break bonds forged in kindness and understanding. When he reached his ship and faced his commanding officers, Veltar would tell them that he had found no weapons on Earth, only unusual mineral formations that created false readings. He would accept whatever punishment they deemed appropriate, but in his heart, he would carry the truth, that he had discovered the most powerful force in the universe, hidden in plain sight in a simple human home. The force of consciousness choosing love over fear, of families who sang together in harmony with the cosmic song that connected all things. And someday, when his punishment was complete and he was free to choose his own path, Veltar knew exactly where he would go. Back to a small house with a garden, where a family would welcome him with warm soup and kind words, and where the universe itself sang lullabies in response to simple human love. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, and everything was exactly as it should be. Word count 1050.